I think when he wrote the ending to The Dark Tower, he knew.
I think it is probably more disrespectful to do a big change in an old book.
This might be the easiest question anyone's ever asked me, and I asked it to myself.
Hey, I'm Joel.
And I'm Trip.
Welcome to the Library of Many Lives, a show where we talk about books and stories and the lives we get to live through them. Today we're exploring the question, what do authors owe their audience? When someone engages with an author's work, emotionally, financially, culturally, does the author owe them anything beyond the book itself?
I think it's highly contextual, first off. There's lots of things that play into this context, but I think the biggest one is what sort of social profile does the author keep? Meaning, are they someone who is very interactive with their audience? Are they someone who's providing tons of updates? Are they someone who is doing the upfront, in your face, going
That's
to
super common now,
cons
too.
and doing are they a personality or are they just a writer? You know what I mean?
Does that change? Does that change it to you?
I think so. I think so because I think some people position themselves in a way where they end up making promises or they lead people who are connected to them to believe that they are going to follow through on something. So
Okay.
I think that if, let's say I put out a book next year, okay, and it's a fantasy book and it's even says on the cover, the Chronicles of whatever. I just
Part
make up
one
and
12.
it says part 1 or number 1, right? Book 1, and it doesn't even say how many, it just says book 1. And then I go radio silent. Like I never do an interview, I never do a podcast. I'm not active on social media, but this book blows up and becomes like Sword of Kaigen levels phenomenon. I think as an author, if that happened to me, I do not owe the people who are reading that book 2.
At all. You
no,
don't owe them, even though
No.
it's a part of a series.
No, I put out a book.
But you're saying though that's because of your author persona, that you haven't been public facing, that you haven't told people, hey, I've got more planned, or made any kind of promises.
Yeah, I think the number one context, in this question of, okay, let's break this question down to a simpler idea. All this really is talking about is what is the relationship between artists and the people who consume their art.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm really glad though that we started with that because I think your position on this is different than mine.
Interesting. Well, here's what I think.
So you're right. We should break it down.
I think that when you're talking about someone who's creating anything, much less art, the number one person that they owe something to in the world is themselves.
Wow. So you would say then that writing is a purely artistic expression?
It can be in a certain context.
Assuming that you don't make promises, you're not front facing. You haven't told people,
use this
hey,
example.
book 2 is going to come. I'm working on it. But you would say in that situation, it's purely artistic, and therefore you owe nothing. Is there some concept here where when you publish and people buy your book and it's a part of a series, you're now entering into some kind of social contract and a financial contract almost, where if this was just purely artistic, why publish it? When you publish, you're now releasing it to an audience.
Well, you're
entering a relationship with people, and they're spending money and supporting you. And I think that there might be a social expectation here where if an author starts down a journey and makes something public and you engage with it and give money, then I don't think it's 100% that you just owe your next book. I don't think it's that. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that, especially when it comes with family and mental health and things like that. But I think there might be some gray area
Well,
here.
I think that I can give you what my reason would be for publishing a book, whether it sells or not. I think that the nature of stories is that if I write that same novel, I'm writing a novel right now. If I finish my novel and I never make it available to anyone to read, I think that in some ways it has not become a fully realized story, because stories are a medium in which the whole thing is sharing. Like,
Wouldn't you say, though, that once you enter into that sharing, you owe it to finish that story?
I don't think so. Let's say I die before book 2's out, but I've got a manuscript, I've got a bunch of notes. Does my family owe it to the readers then to have someone else compile my notes and finish it if a finish to the story is owed? Because this is like getting into something I want us to get into later. I don't know if we're ready to jump into this part yet, but a lot of this has to do, I think, with our conception of ownership and our conception of economies and the, like, we live in a capitalist
Consumerism.
society. Yeah, consumerism. So art has become so consumerist and capitalist, affected by capitalism, that we view it as a product. And we think of authors like, like I could easily come up with a scale of customer service and rank authors on it, and readers could, and we would all be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like Brandon Sanderson would probably be considered an author whose customer service is top notch.
Yep.
Very transparent, very quick, very upfront.
And he delivers on what he promises. Consistent schedule, and he's very front-facing. People, right?
He even makes his college lectures available online.
There's a social contract that's being made there. The same way that if I told you I was going to go help you move, there's consequences for me not following through. Like if moving day comes and I show up 3 hours late, and then when I get there, or let's say I don't even go at all, that's obviously one. Yeah, I said I was going to move. I don't show up. Your perception of me as a friend has like totally changed now. You're like, he told me he was going to do this thing, and he didn't follow through. Like, there's some integrity there. Right. There's some character.
And what do we do in those situations? Our relationship to the other person changes, right? Mm-hmm. So not all of us, those of us who have been in dating relationships or in meaningful friendships have had relationships end over trust being broken.
Mm-hmm.
Over too many times of someone
that,
showing up, saying they're going to show up and they don't.
I think that if they communicate and say, hey, the reason I'm not doing it is I'm burned out, like you said, or I have stuff with the family's been really tough. I'd like to get to it, but I can't. What about... Is it alleviated completely if they're like, I'm just not interested anymore, I just don't like the story?
I think so, because here's the thing. We don't talk about what readers owe authors.
What would you say readers owe authors?
Nothing. You don't owe authors anything. What I'm saying is, let's say I put out that first book and it gets blown up on social media and it becomes the next sort of Kaigen. And then I put out book 2. Does everyone who read book 1 and enjoyed it owe me a purchase of book 2 and reading of book 2?
That's interesting. That's
really interesting. Of course they don't.
Because the author, because you could kind of make this argument on the reverse, where the author is like, we've entered this relationship where
I've done all this work.
You have engaged. I've done all this work. You've engaged and invested in this thing.
Did you like book 1?
You've asked for it, and I followed through to deliver the thing that you wanted, but then you didn't buy the book.
Yeah.
Or you bought it from a used bookstore.
Or you borrowed it from someone.
You
borrowed it from someone.
And I put all this work into this thing for you.
Got it from a library or listened to it on Libby or whatever. And I think all of those things are totally fine. You don't owe the author anything. As an author and artist, I think you do owe your fans an update if something on the calendar of release changes. I think you don't owe it to him. I think it is the right thing to do. And if you don't, any consequences you receive, brother, you just have to live with those. Like I love Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear. I have no sympathy. I shouldn't say no sympathy. I don't have very much sympathy for Patrick Rothfuss when it comes to how people feel about him and his work, given how he's handled this side of things. Now, if Patrick Rothfuss, after Wise Man's Fear, had given an update, said, I think it's going to come out now, whatever, and then at some point had said, hey, listen, I'm just not ready to release it, and I don't know that I'll ever be ready to release it, and I feel like when I tell y'all I'm working on it or it's coming out in a year or 2 years or whatever, I'm just making things worse. So from me to you, Doors of Stone, don't hold your breath.
Into something unethical when an author, not saying that Rothfuss does this, but intentionally chooses to not say something because they know that their books won't sell as well?
I think, yes. I think
like
you
books
do.
will stop selling if I say, hey, I'm probably not going to finish the series.
Yes, I think that you do.
Now it feels like manipulation.
Cross into ethical.
Now,
but I also think that consumers, to move it back to this, more economical idea of art, have to be smart. Do you know who I owe things to?
Your family?
My electric company that provides my power. You know why? Because they are doing a service that I agreed to pay for. A book that hasn't been written yet, you've paid nothing for that book.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who the author does owe something to? A publishing company that's giving him an advance on a book. Like they paid you money to have it done by then. You owe them something. If they agree to change the deadline, that's on them. They're allowed to do that. But I haven't paid for Doors of Stone. I didn't pre-order it. I didn't. Now, that gets into a different territory with Rothfuss because he did have that event where he said, if we raise this amount of money, he owes.
I think that was clearly an ethical.
There's no question.
Crossed.
Patrick Rothfuss owes the community those chapters he agreed to release on audio.
Yeah. There was an actual financial promise that was made. Going back to the video game.
Hold on, I want to finish this thought that I started. What we've done is in the social media internet area, the old school saying of time is money, we actually live that way now, where if a creator or a sports team or a company does things that use our time online, like our eyes, our mental thoughts, our emotional capital, we view that in a very similar way as we view actual hard money, like cash. So
it's transactional.
Yes. So we think that, because you are keeping my attention, you owe me because I'm using mental and emotional energy towards your product, which is why I think that if you've made promises or you've set people up to believe you're going to follow through somewhere, it is your job. It is something you probably owe them to address those in a way that is satisfying, in the sense of, not satisfying in it makes them happy, satisfying in the sense of, hey, if I really don't have a plan to release this thing anytime soon, I say that out, period. And if it's hard, you decided to be the kind of author who gives updates and be in the public spotlight. You could have gone the route of some artists who never even show their face and don't interact online at all. So
do you think that, so what do you think readers think they're owed? I think you have a take here on what artists, that it's art and they don't owe anything. And I think, I would guess, tell us if you agree with this or not, that most people don't agree with you. I would say that most people would say if you've started down the path of releasing something and publishing, it would be respectful and they owe it to the readers to finish. Yeah. So what do you think generally readers expect?
I think that
whether or not it's right or wrong or reasonable.
I think that readers think that they're owed an ending for the most part. Because
they say, hey, it's been started, you owe me an ending.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we, as people who love stories, and that are into reading, not knowing how something comes together in the end is maybe the biggest thing that we despise about these situations, and the thing that like sticks with us. And think about how we feel about bad endings that are unsatisfactory.
Yeah.
People feel cheated. You know, like we both have read The Dark Tower, and that
Do you
is
think that's worse
an
than
infamous
no ending?
No, it's not worse than no ending, in my opinion. Other people may feel differently, but if Stephen King had just decided I'm not putting out the 7th Dark Tower, that would have been way worse for me than if he'd put out one that I didn't like the ending of. I personally like the ending of Dark Tower. I know that's a controversial take for a lot of people.
There's moments in it that fall flat, I think. But overall, I think what happens with Roland and stuff.
Yeah, we're eventually going to have to do a series on the Dark Tower as a whole for sure and reread it.
Actually, I think that there's a new TV show being made.
There is, I think. I heard that, but I could be wrong. After
the disastrous movie.
But that's the thing. Is another thing that I think readers and viewers and consumers think is that they think they deserve the ending that they want. Or the arc of a character that they want. But I'm much more of the Stephen King mind when it comes to writing and creation of stories. Stephen King is very into the idea of like the muse. These stories in his mind, when he talks about them, are out there already, and he's just pulling them from the ether and putting them on the page. So in his book On Writing, he talks about during the Dark Tower series, people writing to him from death row or on their deathbed with cancer, asking him, hey, I know you probably already know where it's going. Could you please tell me what happens to this character? Could you please share with me? And he wrote back to them and said, I'm sorry, I can't, because I don't know.
He's not a planner, is he?
He's not a plotter, so that's a big piece of it. But he also uses language of, I don't choose that these things happen to characters. This is what happens to them.
That, though,
this is what happens to them.
That feels like a vocabulary language thing.
It is.
To get to not take responsibility for the fact that you are generating those ideas.
I think it's nuanced. I think Stephen King.
Hey, it's not coming from me.
Yeah,
you know,
like
that's where the Dark Tower
for sure
went.
But I think
it was always going to go that way.
I think when he wrote the ending to the Dark Tower, he knew that there were going to be people that were going to be furious.
Mm-hmm.
He knew it, bro. There's no way he wrote that ending and didn't know there are going to be some
I have
people.
A feeling Stephen King just doesn't care.
Well, he's at the level of authorship where he does not have to care. But
he just writes what he wants.
He has never cared. Let's just be honest. In his career, he has written what he wants to write. He has...
That's probably freed him to be able to write as much as he's written.
I recommend anyone who is into writing, wants to be an author, even just enjoys Stephen King or writing as a hobby or reading as a hobby, to read his book On Writing. In that book, he gives an anecdote from his college years where he was in a writing class and he would write things that he loved and felt so good about. And like he wrote this story, and it actually became I think this is the story he mentions in On Writing, but I could be wrong. I could be conflating stories. But let's, for the example's sake, say this was a story. He wrote a story about wind-up teeth, like the chattering teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Someone finding an old pair of those in an antique store and winding them up, and then it never stopping, and then like literally eating people, right?
That sounds so Stephen King.
Yeah, and he was so excited about it, thought it was like audacious and unique and different, and his professor sent it back and was like, giant red F on it, said it was pulp, nothing, only good for the wood chipper was like the phrase his professor said. And Stephen King talks about being in class and hearing these other stories that the professor loved and thinking like, this is the most pretentious, lame thing that I've ever read, and they're doing all this allegory and meaning and symbolism. And he's like, he went home and put that F story on his fridge and decided that if what I write is pulp, then let the trees fall. who cares? Like, cut every tree down and let my stories live.
Wow, that
if what I
professor
write-
has got to be like rethinking their approach.
I don't think so, because I think Stephen King's one of
With
those.
Stephen King being one of the most wildly successful authors ever.
But what that professor would probably say is that what Stephen King writes is pulp, and that's why why he's one of the most successful authors ever.
He would
Stephen
say it's
King
the
is
Marvel,
having a moment.
the Marvel
Like,
of
it sounds weird to say Stephen
novels.
King's having a moment, but what I mean
Stephen
is
King's had a moment since he
Stephen
wrote his
King's
first book.
Stephen King's older work is starting to become more accepted and recognized as literary in ways that are meaningful and important, where he used to be seen as just this genre writer who wrote schlocky horror. Oh, it's the one where the dog kills everyone. Oh, it's the one where the car is haunted. Oh, it's the one, like, that's what the cell phone one.
And
People now are starting to
as
critically look at
art.
Stephen King and realize Cujo, bro, go read Cujo and tell me it's not a literary work of meaning with themes and purpose.
Man,
The Long Walk.
Why does
just-
that happen with so many artists? Like the same thing happened with Van Gogh. I think even Shakespeare at the time, right, was considered just plays for
I
the
don't know.
masses. Now
don't
we
know.
look back at Shakespeare. This has always been my. I've never read Shakespeare, but this is my like interpretation of what I know. Is that at the time it was considered just pulp,
Yeah.
fun, putting on plays in the public square kind of thing. And then now we look back on it and we say it's this literary masterpiece.
Yeah.
Do you think that people are going to look back on Marvel movies in the same way? Be careful.
I don't know, because I think Marvel movies are made from a consumerist place. They're made to be the thing that plays to a very broad audience. And
but
pretty
that's
purposefully.
what Shakespeare's plays were.
Yeah, but it was done in his time and culture, and then later we valued some of the things there.
But that's the same thing with Marvel movies. Like it's
I mean,
in
yeah,
the
I guess
time
you're
and culture,
right. It
and
could.
it's these stories that are written. I just say this because I'm not necessarily a Marvel fan, but I just say this because I think the perception of Marvel even say like, oh, that's the Marvel. I literally just said it a minute ago.
Yeah.
Like that's the Marvel of books, is that it's just slop.
Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as to say Marvel is slop. I'm not a Marvel fan either. I get why people like it. I understand that the superhero thing does it for some people. I just think that it is written in a large part of how do we get as many people to watch and interact with this as possible. And I don't think Stephen King has ever wrote a book that was aimed at getting the most people to read it possible.
Yeah.
And, you know, to kind of get back to the conversation that we were on when Stephen King came up, I think that what readers want and what they feel like they deserve from an author is the arc that they want for certain characters they love, the ending that they want, and the more front-facing and the more social the author is, the more that they want and demand things from the author on a personal social level, meaning their opinions on politics, their opinions on art, their engagement on social media, their
There's so much more demanded from an artist now. I mean, a couple years ago, it was really common for people to be upset with companies, with artists, with any kind of public figure if they didn't make a comment on some kind of social event.
I think that's still pretty common.
If there was like some kind of social justice being called for, if your favorite artist didn't put out something on their Twitter or on their blog, then people basically lumped them as being against it or not supporting it just because they didn't interact.
I don't think it's just that we want authors or artists or celebrities to say something. We want them to say what we feel.
We want.
Yeah, they become we want them to be a symbol of like the way we view the world because their story means so much to us. J.K. Rowling's a great example of this. And I know people are all over the map on her as a political person and views and things. Harry Potter, for so many people our age, is so important to who
Yeah.
we were as kids, our memories, who we are as people.
Probably the
And,
most important books for me growing up.
I mean, for our generation, it is the series that
Oh yeah.
will be.
The series that got me into reading.
There are some really powerful themes and meaning in that book. And there are people who, because of J.K. Rowling's stance on human rights issues, that have decided that Harry Potter as a whole should be thrown in the trash because J.K. Rowling is this symbol of not only the stories she's written, but what they really want
Yeah.
is for the author to say what they deem is the correct thing. It's kind of the same thing as my
Be
opinion.
on their team.
Yes, and it's similar in my opinion to when someone says, "Oh, everybody should vote. You know, that's your right. That's like your birthright as an American is
Yeah.
to vote." And if I was to say, "Well, who are you going to vote for?" And they said, "Well, I'm voting for this woman or this guy." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to vote, but I'm going to vote for the opposite person."
Then
They don't actually
the
most
response
people,
to that.
Most people don't want you to vote if you don't feel the same way they do. At least that's not the vibe I get from people. And I think this is the same. It's we want what we expect from authors, what we want from just people with power, influence, platforms in general, is to be reflections of what we believe about the world. So I think people aren't honest with themselves about what they want as readers. They want more than they will say they want, I think, a lot of times.
If an author sets up books, characters, and plot lines in a certain genre so that they're leading towards certain expectations, and then they rip the carpet out from under you, is that disrespectful? For example, if let's say you're writing Harry Potter and you get to book 7 and the book ends with a nuclear bomb dropping and it kills all the characters and the story ends. And nothing is delivered on Harry's story, what happens with Voldemort, and maybe the author did it to make a statement about war. So you thought that this book was a magical young adult, coming of age hero story, and then you subvert and you get everybody dying. Oh, it's actually a political statement, or actually it's a war statement. Is that disrespectful? Do you think the authors owe it to their readers to follow through on the expectations that are set up, I think, in the beginning of their storytelling?
I think this is going to be a very controversial take, and I'm okay with that. It's just how I feel. Absolutely not. I can't even imagine what the response would be to something like that.
Well, think about how powerful of a statement that is.
But
where you're like, your statement is war ruins life and magic.
This goes
and
back to my point about the very first person a creator owes something to is themselves. So if as a creator, I set out not to tell a good story, but to communicate a message, I think I owe it to myself to communicate that message. And
there's a movie that does something similar to this level of like drastic. I don't remember the name of it. I'm probably going to butcher this explanation, but it I think plays like a romance drama with characters who are intertangled in this like web of social relationship, and at the end of the movie, man, somebody's going to have to like come in and tell us what this is and how terribly I explained it, but you find out that the people are working in the Twin Towers, and the planes hit the towers and it like kills this main character.
I'm gonna be honest.
Ends
I've never
the story.
seen that movie. I've never heard of that movie. I would love that movie.
It ends the story, and the statement that's being made is like, look at the destruction.
Yeah.
Ooh, I have chills right now.
Yeah.
Look at the destruction and how people's lives get cut short. You've been invested in this like emotional, meaningful, moving thing, and then it's just done. And look at the destruction that was caused.
And that's a real depiction of someone's experience during a tragedy like 9/11.
Tons of people.
or another tragedy. Someone
Yeah.
was preparing for their wedding or their child's wedding or graduation or whatever. So I think that, and it's also about how well is it done too, right? A lot of what I think we judge that off of is, did this achieve what the creator set out for it to achieve, or did it feel like a cheap twist?
Yeah. Sometimes you get, not even just cheap, sometimes you get this response that's like, you were just trying to get shock
Yeah.
and awe from this thing.
Yeah.
I felt like The Walking Dead started doing this in the TV show. Like, they started killing characters and they were doing it in really gruesome ways. And I think that they were just trying to compete with the Game of Thrones TV show. Like, I think there was this trend of like, oh, who's going to die? Who do you not expect? And this week we'll kill this person. We'll do it in a way that totally subverts. And it wasn't for any kind of meaningful purpose. And I don't think it really served the story.
Yeah. At some point, The Walking Dead became grimdark in nature in a way that was also gratuitous. I think that if you market your book as what's the phrase people use for the opposite of grimdark? They say Brandon Sanderson writes it, bright something bright. I don't think that you
Noble bright.
Noble bright, yeah.
Noble bright.
Yeah, I don't think if you market it as a noble bright novel, and then when I read it, it's not, I don't think you owed me a noble bright novel necessarily. I just think you need new marketers, or you need a better strategy, because the truth is, if I go into a book looking for noble bright and halfway through it's clear that it's grimdark, I'm just not going to finish the book. So to me,
I have a question for you.
To me, let me finish this one sentence, because I think I'm like helping myself understand. To me, when I think of the word I think it means like universally it is well understood that this is expected and this is what is paid or given based on your input or your connection here. And so the reason that doesn't apply to Patrick Rothfuss, well, I would say it does apply to Patrick Rothfuss because of the way he's handled things. But in the scenario where someone puts out a book that's supposed to be one of 4,
Flames of Dissent.
Yeah, Flames of Dissent, it blows up, becomes the biggest thing on social media, and then they decide, I don't want to write the series, and they just go ghost, and they never once told anyone it will come out this time. They don't owe a contract, anything like that. The word owe does not apply there in my mind.
I think you've convinced me on this.
Because
I came into this thinking when you publish, you are entering into a social contract with people, with your audience, that sets certain expectations. And I would use the word owe in that way, that, hey, this is book 1 of 3. It's disrespectful to your readers to not finish. It's disrespectful to not prioritize just getting it done, and you're leaving, especially when people are emotionally invested. Like, people, this isn't just casual reading. I mean, for people like, let's say Harry Potter, for example, like their identity gets wrapped up in what they're reading and in these characters and in this story, and for them to not know whether or not a certain character lives or dies, there's like real emotional investment there that I think shapes the way that people view the world and like view themselves.
There is.
But I think you have convinced me that it is art, and it's not about a just rote, do you owe the rest of the books? It's more so about communication and explanation, that you do owe if you're not going to finish. So I think we agree that you are entering into this kind of social contract, but what you owe isn't the next book. What you owe is communication and some form of transparency
and consistency of some sort
on what the book, on whether or not it's going to come. Because we would both agree, hey, if the mental health of the author is plummeting, they're not a
Yeah, they don't owe you
They're
their
not-
life. They
they're
don't
not
owe
obligated
readers their career,
their
their
time
life,
and their health and these other things. And I will say this, that makes me feel as a, aspiring author, I would say, I would want to be respectful and I would want to communicate and I would want to start something that I, could finish and would finish.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a burden. Like I do you think that authors feel burdened
Yes, for sure.
by their work?
I think so.
Like, do you think that book 3 hangs over Patrick Rothfuss's head?
I would imagine so.
And do you think that he feels some level of guilt for not having finished, or some kind of anger maybe at the
all
audience
I
for
can
how they speak to him? I know Martin gets really upset when people say that he's going to die before he finishes.
Yeah, all I can assume is that they're like me, and when I put forth a set of expectations to someone that I'm going to do something and I fail, I miss that mark, I feel guilty. It hangs over my head. Here's what I will say. Finished stories, books, belong more to the reader than they do the artist. Finished artwork, songs, movies, books, whatever it is, there's a split in ownership, in my opinion, but the majority of the ownership belongs to the people consuming the art, meaning...
I'm not sure what you mean by ownership.
Meaning
like
that
the audience...
Here's a good example. George Lucas going back in and editing
I was
things
just about to
and
bring this
changing
up.
things.
Just about to bring it up.
Brother, no, it is no longer yours. It is the community's now.
Why?
Like,
he's the artist.
Because it's supposed to be, when you release it, it's supposed to be the finished thing. You are setting it out to be watched, interacted with, engaged with. Because think about this. We had this conversation in college. In college, Joel and I started a secret book club where we invited people in our college to be a part of it, and we read books together and talked about them. And one of the books we read was A Clockwork Orange. And A Clockwork Orange is an interesting book because there are versions that were released with the last chapter, and there were versions that were released without that chapter.
Without it.
And that chapter changes the entire idea of the book. It changes literally the entire message. Everything about the book is different in light of that final chapter. This change was made, from my understanding, due to publishers' concerns and their worries. Let's say as an author, I put out a book, and because of the last chapter, people aren't liking it. They're interpreting it in a way that makes me uncomfortable. Maybe they are even interpreting it correctly, but they don't like the message that it sent. I can't go and be like, oh, wait, guys, give that back to me. Let me remove this final chapter, and then I'll put it back out. Now, what do you think, huh? What do you think?
Why not, though? Like, what is this rule that you're applying to books that you're not allowed to do that? People do that with video games. You release patches and updates that change things and fix things and alter story.
I think that's different. But
that's an art. I don't know. It
is an art form, but it's different, bro.
You're telling a story.
What you're patching in a video game is something that's making the video game not function at the level that you want.
But it's not though. Like, there are many times where you're patching things that will change story. They'll change character designs. It's like a living, breathing work of art in that sense.
Yeah,
so
but
how
I
is that
don't
any
think
different than like George Lucas?
I don't think
going
our
back and
culture,
updating his movies.
Because I don't think our culture around books and movies is that they're living documents that change. Like, there are so many movies and books
that's an interesting idea,
that if you went in and you removed a certain scene or you changed who did a certain thing, the people who read the book 10 years ago go read the book again, and they're like, wait, this isn't what happened. And then, of course, we have a whole Mandela effect, theory out there about the book now. But our cultural idea of video games is these things are changed as they need to be. And a lot of the times those games are changed, like Fortnite, Star Wars Battlefront. Things will change. They'll nerf a gun. They will adjust the physics on a certain jetpack, whatever. Skeletak, there would be things we would change to make the game run smoother in certain areas based on bugs or whatever. I've not seen very often a game be patched or changed in a way that changes the message or the meaning of a game.
What if you put a book out and people are like not understanding certain parts of it, maybe because of the language you used? You edit, make it more clear, and you put out a book patch.
No. I think if you want to do something like that, what you should do is what Stephen King did with Rage. Stephen King wrote a book called Rage that was basically about a school shooter, but it was before Columbine ever happened. And this book actually, I think the Columbine guys, but it might have been a different set of mass shooters, said that they were inspired by Rage. Stephen King did not edit Rage. He does not claim to have not written it. He doesn't say they interpreted it wrong. He says, I did not intend for it to be interpreted that way. And he actively worked so that it would never be reprinted. It would never have another print run.
Wow.
He went to his publishers and said, we are not going to print this book anymore. You can get it.
What a
you
nightmare
can read
as an
it.
author.
Right.
You put out something and it inspires.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's being misinterpreted or
Right.
and something you didn't intend. But wow.
And I'm not like a death of the author guy. I'm not saying that once the author puts it out, the author has no ownership or ability to say, I didn't mean that. I didn't intend for it to mean that. Fight Club's a great example of this. Chuck Palahniuk wrote Fight Club. It became a movie, and it's heralded as this, masculine movie that guys watch and go, yeah, that's what men are like. But Chuck Palahniuk has talked about it and been like, I actually was like making fun of people like that. I was actually showing how those things don't offer.
This happens with political memes a lot.
Yeah.
It'll get made to make fun of a certain group, and then that group adopts it, and then all of a sudden it's being used unironically.
Yeah.
Which is
and so I think that part of the conversation here too is as artists. I just don't. As artists, I think what you have to do is ask yourself about your process. Ask yourself, hey, I tried to write this message. Did I not do a good enough job of communicating that message?
If I put a book out and a couple years later I decide, hey, that didn't I've learned more, maybe I've matured and I want to like change the ending and put some new insights into it, I'm not saying I would do this.
It's fine that you do that.
But I
think
if with the earlier conversation, if we're considering the artist not owing anything or being bound, the only thing they owe is themselves. I think that
it's not the
they
only
have the
thing
right.
They owe. It's not the only thing they owe.
Or the only person they owe. I think they maybe have the right here to edit their work.
They do, but when they put that back out, it needs to be labeled as a different edition, like the edited edition, the updated edition, the unabridged edition.
Well, that's what George Lucas does. I mean, technically he edited the movies, but it's just an alternate edition.
So if I go on Disney Plus right now and I click on the original Star Wars movie,
they just have that edition. It's the 20th
century
edition. I don't forget what they call it.
But there's no way for someone who's unaccustomed to the Star Wars world to know that what they're looking at is different than the original. And I think that if you're gonna update something, you should. It would be a good thing. I guess you.
I would agree with that. It would be a good
clear
thing, or that it would be respectful.
I've changed this, and I just think that digital media. I just think that culturally, maybe y'all let us know if y'all feel differently about this. I think our cultural norms around digital media is very different than our cultural norms around the written word.
And maybe that's why like video games are different.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just purely expectation. It's just what's the norm here in our culture? Video games get patches, things can change, but
imagine if J.K. Rowling decided, you know what? In the Order of the Phoenix, when Sirius falls through the veil, I think that was a mistake. I mean, if you want to talk about what an author owes someone, here, I think an author, something I think maybe authors do owe this. I think authors owe their readers the integrity of what they've already put out. Like if I come to this book and I experience it as the way you intended it the first time, I think you owe it to your readers to leave it that way.
I think it's different when you talk about scale. Like if you're talking about changing a book series that is done and it's popular and out, I think that the number of people that are going to be affected by the change does factor into this. And I think with the example of like, I'm an author who nobody knows who I am, and I put out a book, 100 people read it. I realize, oh, I didn't do this thing well. I do another print run with an alternate ending, and it's, I wouldn't say better, but maybe it's more emotional. It's more impactful.
It would depend on what they changed
awesome.
to, I think, for me. I think it would depend. Here's what would make me lose the author or the book lose favor for me, is if what they changed to me felt like they were giving in to some sort of pressure regarding the decision they made for a character or the way they wrapped up the story. If it was just quality, if it was just like, hey, the ending was falling flat because I didn't do enough dialogue. The ending was falling flat because the way I worded this one thing and they changed that, I'd be like, okay. But like if Stephen King, after receiving pushback on one of his endings, went back in and made the ending totally different.
He was like, oh man, yeah, people just don't like it and I want to please them. So
I mean, it's the Clockwork
totally
Orange thing again.
This.
It's like if somebody was like, man, that last chapter's a real bummer, huh? And you're like, well, let's just take it out.
I think this is like, why we feel weird about like movie screenings where they do, what is that called? Where they do like audience test responses or something. I mean,
I am going to do this with my book, right? I'm going to give my book to beta readers, ask them for feedback, and make changes. I think that there's a difference between making it publicly available and making it available to a select few. I think there is some level of integrity. It's funny, you're kind of changing my mind. I think maybe authors do owe people something. It's not the next book. I definitely don't think they owe them the next book or a good ending. They don't owe them the ending they want. They don't owe them, their time or effort on the project. I think they do. There is a level of artistic integrity that I think they owe them the real thing. Like, if this is the thing you created and you made and you felt good about, that's what I want. I at least want access to that thing. I'm just not sure that there's
ever an end point. First draft to third draft to final draft to release.
So in your mind, if George
kind of
R.
an
Martin,
artificial line to me.
Hold on. If in your mind, if George R. R. Martin, in the midst of writing Winds of Winter, decides, you know what, I really don't like the direction I went with Jon Snow's character, he could go back and change.
I don't want this.
Events. No. I'm saying,
I definitely don't want this.
What's worse, him not finishing Winds of Winter, or him being like, you know what would help me finish Winds of Winter? If Jon Snow was in a different situation. I'm going to go back to A Dance with Dragons and change Jon Snow's arc so that I can do this new thing in Winds of Winter. You'd be all right with that, or you'd rather him not be able to finish Winds of Winter?
I don't.
This might be the easiest question anyone's ever asked me, and I asked it to myself.
I think what's being changed is important. I would not want him to alter what's been put out,
which is
especially
more
if it's
disrespectful
big plot
or
things.
transgressive to a reader.
I think it is probably more disrespectful to do a big change in an old book.
Do you know what the Ship of Theseus
But small
is?
changes, though, I think we already get small changes in some things. We'll get books maybe that have extra chapters or have alternate points of view of characters and things that do change your perception of the story, because now you're seeing it from like,
if you add something
the boyfriend's
new,
point of view.
If you add a new chapter or a new novella that, in light of the things that happen there, alter my perception of the story, okay, I can give it that.
That's so, I don't know, man.
I feel better about that than
because like
No, hold
let's
on.
say a character
I
dies.
feel way better about that than you cutting something from the book that already exists.
Yeah, but what if you have a character that dies? You put out a chapter in a new version, an updated version. Hey, it's a special edition. It's got a new chapter. And in that chapter, you get the point of view from another character who slipped that person some medicine that made it look like something that would suppress their body, vital signs. So it looked like they died. They didn't actually die, but you had intended for that character to be dead. Now in the updated version, that's your way of having the character not die.
Like it. I would not like it. I would rather them do it that way than to go in and just rewrite the chapter where they died and be like, no, actually, someone saved their life and they.
I wonder if there's ever been an author that's done this. Like, hey, I put out another chapter and that actually altered because of the perception, the different point of view or something. It actually kind of altered what happened, and they're like, oh yeah, I kind of always intended that character didn't die, and the reason they were doing that is they wanted an ending, or something.
I think
this is tough.
No, it's not tough. It is way
I don't
more.
I don't want them to do this, and I think the reason I brought this up was just
I'm
with
not
the idea that an artist owes. Like, I think the idea that the only person an artist owes anything to is themselves.
That's not
that
what
was
I said.
just me.
You're changing.
That's just me challenge. Wait,
you're
what did
changing.
you say then?
I said the first person the artist owes anything to is themselves.
Okay, so that's different. And going off of that, I'm just challenging that by being like, well, if the first person that they owe, can't they then just edit their work? Because really they just owe themselves, but they owe themselves first, and maybe they really need to update this book with opinion, new information and this new piece of character.
Feel that way. What you can do as that author in a more proper, polite, less transgressive way, in my opinion, is to write a blog post, put out in interviews on podcasts. Yeah, I really don't like that I made this decision in that book. Here's why I made that decision at the time. I really think the story would have been served better if I had went this way.
I agree that authors shouldn't do this, and it is maybe contextual that there are small things that could be changed, like maybe some of the language to help make an idea clear, but the idea is still the same, or the character is still the same, or maybe there's a chapter that's added. I think I'm okay with small levels of that happening, and I think it just depends on the kind of impact that it has on the ideas. However, stories weren't always like that. It used to be that stories did evolve and change, and especially when stories were myth and were passed on orally, and even in old writings, they would change over time, and they would change.
Well, when they were oral traditions, they 100% would change.
Yeah, details would change. They were flexible.
But in 2026 America, our idea of a book. This is actually just an excuse for me to show off my first edition of It by Stephen King. Our idea of a book is that it is like a set thing.
So pretty.
And if Stephen King changed something in It, for my sake, I would hope that he would respect me enough and respect his readers enough to put updated edition, second edition, edited edition, or even call it Dairy or something like that instead.
We see this with abridged editions. That might actually be.
Doesn't that thing look so good?
It's pretty cool.
It's so awesome.
It's pretty cool. I think the best example we get of this is abridged editions.
Yeah,
where a book gets put out and
abridged means shorter,
removed.
Right?
Yeah, it's shorter. Yeah. Stuff's been removed, especially if they're doing like an audiobook. Is it the same book anymore? Is it the same work of art when you're only getting a piece of it? You're only getting 75% of it?
Here's the other thing. I think there's room for multiple opinions on this, and they all have value. That's something that I really want to recognize here. I'm a purist, so I don't want... Well, I'm kind of a mix because I'm not the kind of person that cares that they're making Snape black in the new Harry Potter series. That just does not even begin to bother me. Because I largely feel that once a book or story is out in the community, the ownership shifts, especially when you sign over your rights to a company, J.K. Rowling, to adapt your story. You legally have given them the right to do these things. I think that's why I don't have a problem if people write fan fiction.
So I'm in, like, I really want people to watch this episode and tell us what they think.
Yeah.
Like, especially when we were getting into the, like, should an author edit? I think we're pretty in agreement on,
yeah,
like, that maybe the authors don't necessarily owe something, but there are, like, social contract respect type things.
Yep.
So maybe, so if you have thoughts on this, please comment, talk to us. Like, man, I want to hear, and maybe we'll, like, even talk about, we can carry this conversation forward if people have, differing opinions on it.
Yeah, let us know how stupid we are. Let us know where you agree with us.
I feel like I pushed so hard on something I am not even sure that I agreed with.
Yeah, and I mean, my nature is to talk in circles and to kind of jump back and forth between ideas until I land on something that I'm like, feel pretty good about. I think the real answer is that they owe them something. It is often, in my opinion, not what we as readers think they owe us. And it is highly contextual. And that context includes things like what's going on in the author's life, what's their level of front-facing communication, what have they promised? Yeah, what have they promised, and what expectations have they given their community based on the things they've said and done. And outside of those things, I think it gets pretty clear. But once you start adding those layers of context, it gets pretty tough. It's like the Good Place problem, like that show, The Good Place. Like once you add so much context, nobody goes to The Good Place. It's like that. Once you add so many layers of context,
that's a great example.
Digging out what authors owe them versus what readers owe them kind of comes down to.
It's a relationship.
Yes, it is a relationship.
It's about how you communicate, how you respect each other. It'll be different for different people, and I think different audiences will respond to things in different ways. And it's just contextual.
Now,
Okay. Wait, no, we're gonna circle. This is gonna be us circling again.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say it's like this podcast is a relationship.
Oh, yes. Join us in it. I really want to hear from people. There'll be socials in the down below. We're so bad at this part.
In the down below.
Yeah, we're so terrible at this part.
Sounds like a knockoff of Stranger Things. Where did they take 13? In the down below.
Yeah, comment in the down below. Follow us. We'll have social media links and stuff.
Yeah, in the down below is the upside down from a show called Mysterious Items.
That's so stupid. All right. I will talk to you later, man.
Yep. See you, bro.